I am so grateful. I'm
Oh
teared
my
up.
gosh, I think she's tearing up.
Hey guys, welcome back to our show.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here today, and we have our first guest. Um, I formally call her future mom or Rendy, but welcome Roxanne Zaparo.
Thank you for inviting me today. I appreciate it.
That is my mom.
Yep, for those of you
Context.
listening, watching, Deanna's mom, and she has a lot of context and stories. And what do you do for a living that makes you especially qualified to talk about some of these things?
I wouldn't say I'm especially qualified, but I am a nurse. Um, in the initial setting of when Deanna first had her stroke, I really was more of a mom. I had to be mom first. Nursing could wait.
Right.
So I had to set aside that. But, it did help me in the fact that I had a lot of knowledge about the physiology of what had happened to her.
Very cool. Well, thank you for being here. Your first time on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's a lot less stress than doing TikTok live because we can cut. There's no like if you mess up, if you sneeze, we don't have to,
I did like the TikTok live though.
Yeah, it was really good.
I enjoyed the
engaging.
interaction and the questions coming from the community into us and then being able to answer it.
We should go live again.
Yeah, we
in
should
a
do a
couple
live
of weeks.
episode soon.
Yeah, I wanted to go live doing a behind the scenes while we were doing the TikTok as well. Maybe we'll do that next time, and I'll train Naish on how to run the TikTok live. So Naish is behind the scenes. He's Deanna's dad, Ignatius. Maybe we'll have him on the podcast one of these times too. But so we're gonna kick off the episode. First things first, we have our guest. We have a thought. One of the segments is a thought with whoever our guest is. So whatever's on your mind today, just feel free to share.
Well, I think what was really on my heart today was the fact that there are so many people out there who need to have an advocate for them, whether it be a friend, a parent, another relative, someone else in the community. It sometimes gets rough being an advocate, but my thoughts were kind of going that way that advocates, they always say, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's better said than done.
Yeah.
Believe me. But also that being an advocate, if you feel your loved one needs this or that therapy or this or that appointment with a specialist and you're getting stonewalled by maybe your general practitioner, there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. There's nothing wrong with checking out the cost of the service that you're looking for, because sometimes you do have to pay for things out of pocket.
Right.
One example I know is a woman had hold on, it'll come to me.
Well, you're
A
thinking.
mammogram, that's
Oh.
the word I'm looking for. And there was a spot on it, and she wanted a second opinion, and the insurance company kept saying, no, it's probably nothing. No worries, just come back in a year. The doctor said the same thing. She just had a gut feeling, and she paid for a mammogram out of her own pocket, and thank God she did, because it was something.
Yeah.
So, I think we cannot depend on the insurance companies to pay for every single dime of our health care. Sometimes we need to do it ourselves.
Well, and you paid out of pocket with my bioness.
Yes, because the insurance company said there's no way. She doesn't need it. It's not medically necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked it over as a family, and we decided that it would benefit Deanna. The therapists felt that it would benefit Deanna.
What is a bioness?
A bioness, there's two parts to it. There's a part that goes on your upper calf, and then there's a part, it goes down by your heel, so that every time you get a heel strike when you're walking, it sends an electric
Shock?
not a shock, but it sends an electric notification that goes off up in here, and that's where the ball of your foot is actually innervated from. So it'll bring up the ball of your foot. So that way you're not dragging your foot with foot drop. And it helps you to walk more normally, a more normal gait. Will you be running with one? Probably not. Although I think they have one in they're a different brand in the
Yeah.
commercial where the guy
Well,
is running. And I'm
As
like,
technology advances, it probably becomes more effective and more efficient.
Yeah.
Well, I did run with my Bioness
mm-hmm.
a couple of times.
So thank you for that thought. That was a quite in-depth thought for the day. So yeah, our next segment, we actually have a special segment today. Our sponsor, Cardinal Artworks, sent over a gift for Deanna to open today. So for those of you watching on video, you'll be able to see it. For those of you listening on audio, we'll describe what's happening as it's happening, and then be sure to check out Deanna's Instagram and TikTok, as you'll get to see it in action there.
At Deanna Zuparo.
Yep, at all the places. Also, you can always find all of our links at deannazaparo.com. We have them all listed down there in the footer. So without further ado, Deanna, I think this is for you, if you want to open it.
I can't wait to see what's in it.
Can you get...
Fresh from Cardinal Artworks. Let me move your mic out of the way.
They do such nice work. I've seen some of their work, and they make beautiful things.
They do. I don't think you need the scissors. We pre-opened it for you. You just have to rip it. There you go. We're going to have to clean up the set later. All the tape everywhere. Stick it back in the box.
Ooh, what's in it? What's in it?
So far, we've got wrapping paper, packing paper.
Bubble wrap.
Bubble wrap. This red thing is for the other thing that came in the box.
Ooh.
Yep, we'll read that after you open the rest. Just sneeze.
That's pretty the way they wrapped it.
Little unwrapping ASMR.
Yeah.
So for those of you not watching, Deanna's just throwing stuff at me over here.
Kind of looks like Christmas morning.
Is
So
that my...
Your mic's not in front of you. So we got a...
Is that a modified cutting board?
It might be. Right now, it just looks like a big square wrapped in white tissue paper and a red string around it. You know, I guess you'll just have to open it to see. Almost there. I feel like playing the Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do,
Probably
do.
should in the background.
Yeah. If it wasn't copyrighted.
Ooh, look at that. That is gorgeous.
So we are looking at, if you want to show it to the camera for everybody on camera, careful of your mic. Careful of your mic. This is a handmade, modified one-handed cutting board.
Oh,
Made out of a bunch of different varieties of wood.
It's gorgeous.
They're all rare or premium wood. So those of you listening that don't know what a modified cutting board is, we'll have our guest kind of explain that.
May I hold it? It is gorgeous.
it's heavy.
Oh,
This
is nice because it's not going to slide around on the countertop. To begin with one person is cutting with one hand, you need some grippers on the bottom so that the cutting board doesn't slide away from you. And I can tell you, this guy must weigh 20 pounds, I swear.
Yeah.
But what's nice about this is right here, there are 3 little pointy, they're not nails.
No, those are nails.
Are they?
Yeah.
But I know they're stainless.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Scott and Christina had a lot of trouble sourcing stainless steel nails that were long enough because you have to have something that's not going to rust and is food
grade.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, food grade. So let's say you want to cut a tomato or an apple. You center the fruit or the vegetable on the little nails, and it'll hold it in place so that you can cut it with one hand. cut it into slices. Now over here, let's say you just finished toasting your toast for breakfast and you want to put some jam on it.
Just talking about the upper right-hand corner.
It has these two
Left, depending
wooden
on how you look at it.
pieces that are raised. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, for those
on
of
the
you
camera.
on video, for those of you that are not on video, she's talking about the upper left-hand corner has two raised wooden pieces that can hold food in place.
In an L shape.
Yep.
So that it holds the food in place. So you can put your bread in here, and if you're doing it with one hand, you can use the knife and come into the L pieces so that your bread doesn't slide all over the counter. And it just is so much more convenient for someone who has a difficult time.
Yep. And we really do want to thank Cardinal Artworks for this.
Yes, we
Scott
do.
hand makes all of his wooden products in a very traditional manner. You'll notice that there's very minimal screws, only where necessary. So the grippers on the bottom are the only place with the screws. Everything else is very traditionally done. And
It's so smooth.
yep. And
It's
why don't we,
beautiful.
there is another little package over there, Deanna. If you want to open that other package, it goes with it.
I am so grateful. I'm
I think,
teared
oh my
up.
gosh, I think she's tearing up.
Thank you.
So while Deanna opens the second package, I do want to say that Scott and Christina are now making these for sale. And currently, you can only
For the modified cutting boards you were saying.
Yep, open this. I'll talk about that. So Scott and Christina are making these for the general public. You can. Sorry, so I should have seen that one coming. More unwrapping ASMR. Scott and Christina are making these for the general public. You can only buy them currently on our website, DeannaZaparo.com. By the time that this podcast is out, that will be up. And for our Discord members, we're offering a discount. I think Scott and Christina said 25% off these
Wow,
wooden cutting
that's a
boards.
lot.
Yep, only available for our Discord subscribers. But anybody can buy these. You just have to go to DeannaZaparo.com.
Would they make one without the modifications if someone didn't need that?
Yep, you can buy regular cutting boards available on CardinalArtworks.com.
Because this would make a great, I never say the word right, charcuterie board?
Charcuterie board?
Charcuterie board?
Yeah, they make
This is
charcuterie boards,
beautiful.
cutting blocks, you name it. But there is something else in here,
Ooh,
Deanna,
what's
if
in
you want to
there?
open it up. So this, Deanna, is, and for everybody watching, board butter. So, yep, along with your cutting boards come a board care card that tells you
Just
how
set it
to.
right in here
Yeah,
so people can see, look, things don't fall off.
it comes with care instructions, and we'll read this later. So just know that anybody that's getting your board, in order for these to last, you do need to follow the board care instructions because it's natural wood. It's not really designed for dishwasher use,
Absolutely
etc.
not a dishwasher.
So for example, it says in here, never put your board in the dishwasher, never submerge or soak it in water.
But you can take a damp sponge to
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they have this board butter, which keeps the wood nice and vibrant.
That, and if anybody has like wooden spoons that they use all the time, they usually use olive oil to keep the wooden spoons from cracking. So with this here board butter, if you use it on this board will last you years.
Yeah. And the thing that I really love about this is Scott is such a not a fanatic. Scott is such a fan of quality products that they source these rare woods. And I'm not a wood person, so I couldn't tell you what it is, but I know that there are some exotics in there. So it's a really good quality product.
And you can even see with the staining that he did down here that it is perfect to the board. There's no overrun. There's no open areas. It is truly done perfectly.
Yeah. So that's from Cardinal Artworks. And
I just wanted to bring this up. If people can't tell on the video, these corners are all rounded. So there's no sharp corners.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Deanna should cook dinner tonight.
I think
Well,
so. Well, we're definitely going to make a TikTok video with that later tonight too.
yeah.
So that'll take the place of our ad sponsor for Cardinal Artworks this time. So yeah, thank you, blah blah blah. Thank you, Scott and Christina from Cardinal Artworks for that wonderful gift. And I hope everybody goes deannazaparo.com, check it out.
Yeah.
And then again, our Patreon subscribers can get 25% off. So our next segment is we'd like to talk about intense therapies.
Mm.
We touched on that in our last podcast episode, but we thought, you and Deanna went together, so you
Every time.
you both would be able to talk a little bit more about
Mhm.
that. So I'll give you two the floor, and I'll try to interrupt minimally. So if you want to start wherever how you found it, why you chose where you chose, and then your experiences.
How I found it. Deanna was starting to come to the end of her therapies that she could have through our insurance company. And though I personally have come to hate the word functional, they were telling me that she was functional. Now, she had no use of her hand. She could shrug, and she had a little use of her elbow, but it wasn't enough to be what I would consider to be functional. So, and the same with her speech. She could utter, 2 or 3 words, and they considered that functional. And I'm looking at a 14-year-old girl going, that is not functional. 14-year-old girls have so much on their mind that they want to chat about with their friends. Certainly not with their parents, but at least with their friends. So I started doing some research about what other options might be out there. And I was on Google Scholar because I don't believe in just going to Google. If you're looking
Right.
for real information, you
Mm.
need to go to Google Scholar. And I came across a group of papers that was written by Edward Taub about, they were written in the 80s, actually, a long time ago, about how monkeys, when they had an injury, would naturally use the unaffected limb. But when you constrained the affected limb, the monkeys would figure out how to use the unaffected limb to get food out of a dish. They're animals. They're not going to let themselves starve.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's a lot more that goes into it. There's neuro uh, plasticity that goes into it that, they found out years later that that's what was happening to the monkeys. Their brains were changing and rewiring to the affected limb. And I through the research, I found that Dr. Taub had a clinic in Alabama. So I called down there, and lo and behold, they were actually doing a study on language. Does constraint induced therapy work on language? And uh, we applied for. I talked to Deanna about it, and she thought, "Yeah, let's do this." She couldn't say it. She just went, "Mm-hmm."
Right.
And we flew down and participated in their study, and they found that it really does work for language. Let me back up a little bit. I also found at the same time that they were doing constraint induced therapy for the arm. So actually, the first time
For
we went down for her arm.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's how Dr. Taub got to know
Us
us. Yeah.
and our story.
Yep.
And real quick, as so that I'm understanding and maybe our guests are understanding, the reason that you did all of this is because when she went to therapy here, there got to a point where she was like, if I'm remembering correctly, you said she's functional enough, and you're like, what? And so that's ultimately what led here.
Yes, absolutely. Um, the functional abilities that they think is okay to release you from continued rehabilitation therapy is nowhere near what I would consider a functional level.
Right.
Through Dr. Taub's work, he also has done studies about how many caregivers could go back to work because their person that was depending on them became so independent that they could return to work. And I thought, well, what a great idea that would be. So, um, let's see, we did the arm. Deanna did very well. We did the language therapy, which really blew me away because she was only doing 2, 3 word sentences, if you could
Mhm.
call them that. And the way they do the therapy, I can't even explain it. All of a sudden, she was able, this one time in therapy, she got 16 words out that pretty much made sense.
Right.
And we're like, so the language is in there. It's getting it out of there. That's the problem,
Right.
which we knew.
Right.
But like in Rochester, you only go to therapy maybe 3 times a week for 45 minutes. Now, with people who have neurological disorders, you really need to have the repetitive nature continue. So if you just go to therapy for your 45 minutes 3 times a week, you don't do anything else all week, you're really not going to improve.
Right. Is that's a process called, what is it called, Deanna? Neuroplasticity?
Mhm.
Hmm.
And if you're not working
Diligently.
those brain muscles, you're not forming those
And
pathways.
neurons sprouted.
Yep. In Dr. Taub's research, they found that after completing constraint-induced therapy, the brain actually grows a little more gray matter each time, which allows you more neurons that can hook to other neurons.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's kind of like the basis of it. But, oh, as I was saying, with the constraint-induced therapy, she would work with a therapist on her arm 4 hours a day.
Mhm.
She'd come home. She needed a nap because, boy, that it doesn't look like hard work, but it is.
Well, and that reminds me of, because I'm a big dog person. You can run a dog all day long and not tire it out, but if you work out their brain and make them think, they're going to be napping for the rest of the evening.
Exactly.
So, not to compare you to a
I
dog
mean,
or
a
anything,
dog, but
but the brain. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to mind is
Mhm.
you work out the brain, you're tired.
You're exhausted. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, let's see. She would go home, take a nap. She'd wake up around dinner time. I'd make dinner. And then we'd have like 2 to 3 hours of homework.
And that's something
Mhm.
that Deanna mentioned the last time that I thought was really something that I don't think anybody realizes is that for intense occupational therapy to work,
Mhm.
it's not just inside the classroom, so to speak.
Hmm. I mean, you really have to continue working at it. Some of the
Work it.
homework was
Yeah.
we'd go outside of our door of the hotel room and she'd have to try and open the door. She'd have to try and bring her
With
cup to her
my
mouth with the affected arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, because the unaffected arm was casted.
Yep.
There was no using it. So for constraint-induced therapy, at least with the arm, they cast your good arm
Mhm.
and they make you do everything with the affected limb or the affected arm. So some of her homework after we were done with therapy was to go back to the hotel room and work at trying to open the hotel room door, work at pulling a cabinet open, work at pulling the refrigerator open, work on holding a cup and trying to bring it to your mouth. As she became more, um, as she had more recovery, they worked on fine motor skills like out of a box of beans, pick up the penny, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And when you get home from constraint induced therapy, they send you home with exercises.
Mhm.
And if you don't
And
do them,
homework.
yeah, oh, yeah. If you don't do them, you just slide back to where you were. So it is a pretty significant commitment.
Right. And without that type of therapy, um, do you think she would be doing the things that she's doing now?
Absolutely not.
Because I know you and I can both agree that she probably could do more. And every once in a while she'll take like a paper chip,
The clipper.
yeah, clip that goes over the bag of chips, and she'll work her hand.
Yeah.
And I remember you're always like, "Good job, Deanna, for doing that."
Yeah.
But I've never knew Deanna what before, so I have nothing to compare it to other than what the documentary video is that we're working on. But um, so it's just good to get that other opinion that, it really does work.
It does.
And from your mouth to everybody that's listening's ears, uh,
Well, if they
yeah,
look at Taub's research, it shows that, like I said, people became independent enough where their caregiver was able to leave the house, knowing that their loved one would be safe.
yeah. And Deanna went off. to college for a semester and basically lived on her own.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think, Deanna, could you have done that without this type of therapy?
No, not at all.
No. It really accelerated the recovery process.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard and long.
It's difficult.
But my speech over the years was, I say, good, but people not every day, like, talk to me every day.
So people who
Like, my best friend lives in Long Island now,
Mhm.
and she was in Syracuse, and then she lived, like, in the neighborhood, like,
prior to your stroke.
yeah, and moved to Syracuse, and then she went to Long Island for school and living there now. And she didn't talk to me every day, and she sees the difference.
Oh, yeah, yeah. As a caregiver, you might not see the difference, but when the person runs into someone who they knew prior or they had seen maybe 6 months before the therapy and now you're seeing them 6 months post-therapy,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be blown away at
Right.
the progress that's been
Because you
made.
and I see her every day, and we learn to speak aphasia. So
At work,
to us,
I
it's
met
normal.
through my work, I met with a family whose loved one was affected by aphasia, and they were very concerned about me communicating with the person.
Mhm.
And I smiled and I said, "No worries, I speak fluent aphasia." And really, we did quite well.
Yeah. And so Deanna quickly transitioned from physical therapy to speech therapy,
Mhm.
but where you did, if you both want to touch on where you did a lot of the speech therapy.
Hey guys, I am so glad you're listening into our show. We need to tell you about Patreon.
That's right. We have a Patreon channel where our most dedicated listeners can show their support and get extra benefits like early episodes, and everything is ad-free. In addition, Deanna puts out a monthly newsletter and a lot of extra great content like behind the scenes and bonus merchandise discount codes.
Exactly. Way to go, Tyler.
So we want to see you over there at the Patreon, and we have many different tiers for you to choose from. Feel free to go check it out. The link is in the show notes. And also, one quick thing: we have a TikTok channel, D, right?
Yes,
So
we do.
yeah, if you like the content that we're putting out, go see us over on TikTok as well.
Back to the show.
In terms of Alabama, if you have the option to go there, it's fabulous.
Well, now
And
the Todd Clinic is closed now.
Well, he's still teaching at UAB.
yeah,
His own clinic, as far as I understand, is closed, but
Yeah.
UAB still has his program. Because
absolutely.
we did the interview, he's still teaching. He's still teaching people, and they still do it. It just, I think it went from more of a theoretical research into implementation.
Yeah.
It is definitely being implemented in
Yeah.
other places in the country. Unfortunately, not in New York,
Right.
but
And he said it's all over the world. He was in
Yeah.
Germany a couple years ago opening a clinic.
Yep.
And he's from Germany, if I recall, or German descent or something.
German descent.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, for the Taub Clinic, the speech and language portion of it, they really focused on just language.
hmm
And Deanna was having trouble reading. She still is not reading fully, but reading has just been a stickler for her. And I found a program at Marquette University where they not only did speech, they worked in the reading portion.
Right.
So I reached out to Jackie Potawellis and talked to her. She put me in touch with Tina Pugalusi, and we waited for a spot to open up and went out there for 3 weeks. And again, they work on the theory of brain plasticity.
Right.
They work on the theory of constraint-induced therapy.
And this was at Marquette
Marquette
University.
University, yeah,
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Mhm.
So we went there, and their program is outstanding.
Mhm.
And we ended up going back 5 times.
6.
6?
Yeah.
I lost count of one.
Well, the first time versus the last time, I had 80% talking and then 20% reading. And then the last time I went, it was 80% reading and then 20% talking.
Mm-hmm. So they will literally they make a program suited just to that individual. And if that individual starts progressing quicker within the therapy, they throw that program out the window. They put their heads together and they make another program kind of on the fly, because when they see that kind of progression, they want to take advantage of it.
Right.
And I found that interesting.
And it's another intense program.
Oh, absolutely. With homework.
3 to 4 hours a day.
Plus
and then
homework.
Homework.
Mm-hmm.
And having a nap after every time. Every day.
And so do you see results instantly, or does it take like a couple of months for those neurons to settle in?
Yeah.
I have seen results instantly, and I have seen the benefit of the 3 or 4 months later, that like even more comes. It's like watching a flower bloom. You might see a few of the petals open and it's looking beautiful. And when you come home, like 3 months later, the flower is fully open. It's just something to behold as far as I'm concerned.
So it's instant, but then
It
it
continues.
continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question that I thought of. What would have happened if she had a stroke on the other side of her brain? Is the speech center also on the other side of the brain,
No,
or would that have affected different things?
Not unless she was left-handed, because left-handers a lot of times have the speech center. I don't know if it's directly in the middle or a little on each side, but either way, if it had been on the other side, that affects emotions. So she would have been possibly emotionally unstable, making poor decisions for herself. Um, her left side would have been affected as opposed to her right. So yeah, there is different functions based on where the stroke is.
So all things considered, I mean, ideally not to have a stroke, but the powers that be made it on the better side, I guess.
And going into line at the like not Wegmans, going to Starbucks, having the good hand, like
Oh, driving out the window. Yeah.
No, going to Starbucks in the
Yeah.
drive-through,
Yeah, your
having
window
the
hands open.
cup.
Oh, so you can get the cup with your good hand, not your affected hand.
But if it was on the other side, it could have possibly affected her ability to make good
Decisions.
good decisions,
Safe
Rational.
decisions.
which ultimately is the more important.
Yeah.
But that's not. I feel like we have to make the statement that that's not always guaranteed to be the case. It depends
Correct.
on
Exactly.
the person
Every
and how their
stroke
brain
is different.
Yeah.
Every
Exactly.
stroke.
Yes.
Like our friend Matt, he had a stroke and his vision was affected in a completely different way,
Mhm.
even though it was the same side of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It just is.
Yeah.
Just goes to show you how amazingly and uncomprehensively complex the brain is.
Absolutely.
Well, with Matt, she
He oh, Matt, if you're listening, Deanna just called you a girl.
sorry. He has aphasia, but not severe.
Right, but his vision is like a double vision,
Yeah.
and you're blind from the middle right over.
Yeah. In my eyes. Yeah.
Which is just fascinating that one person can end up with double vision and the other person can just be blind.
Mm-hmm. So one of the
Totally
things I wanted to say, Deanna had gone to Starbucks on her own. We were maybe 3 weeks out from a visit to Marquette for speech.
Mm.
She pulled up to the sign where you can figure out what you want to order. Although she already knows what she wants to order
Right.
because she's just a fan of Starbucks.
We're
Anyway,
working on making her a Duncan fan.
anyway, she came home and she was overjoyed. She said, Mom, I looked at the sign and was able to read what I wanted. So whether it was, I don't remember, was it a caramel macchiato at the time?
No, it was the holiday drink, the caramel brulee latte.
Creme brulee or
Creme.
caramel? Creme, CREME?
No, caramel brulee.
Caramel brulee? See, I'm not a Starbucks fan. You could tell me that they have
latte.
alien brain Swiss chocolate, and I'll like that could be a thing for me.
She was just elated because she was able to look at the menu and see what she wanted and read it.
Yeah. And I'll notice when we're driving down the road, there'll be like some signs, road signs or otherwise, with really hard words. And she'll be like, oh, blah. And you look at her like,
What?
holy hell, girl. I can't even pronounce that word. But it's interesting because then sometimes she'll get stuck on really easy words.
Mhm.
Could you explain, you could probably do it better than I could, the speech therapist at Marquette explained it really well, and you've probably heard it explained more, so you'll know why that is. Something about like the Swiss cheese and like
Reference.
it's there, but it can't come out and it changes, or how was that described, if you recall?
Well, having holes in the Swiss cheese reference.
Right. So some things are still together and some things there's holes in it.
Right.
And sometimes neurons travel around each other or around the hole and reconnect. So there's a couple different ways I've heard it put. One of the speech therapists here in Rochester said aphasia is like having a merry-go-round in your head. You watch for your horse to come up and that horse is your word. And you go to get that horse and say it. And for some reason, the merry-go-round speeds up and the horse is gone. So you don't know what you wanted to say. And
Yeah.
then, other people have put it like a spider web. Some spider webs are very dense
Mhm.
and some spider webs are very loose. After stroke, you're not sure what you have. So they work on trying to put it all back together again.
And what is aphasia?
It would be a lack of language.
I like to describe it to people as, imagine having a never-ending brain fart. Is this true, Deanna? I mean, you're living it in your
Sometimes.
head where
Yeah.
you know the word. Like if we're thinking of
Oh my gosh.
banana, for example.
I went to banana. Okay. Funny thing that said that. I went to my friend's house yesterday who had a stroke too. And affected side was her right like body side. Yeah, side. And she said something and in my head it was correct, but like said banana. I'm like, no, not a banana. It was a do-rag. And I said that multiple times. Banana. I'm like, what the heck?
I wonder if your brain was thinking of bandana.
Bandana?
Yeah.
I think so too.
Because that's technically like do-rag is a style of wearing a bandana, I think. But it's like back to my example with banana. If sometimes you're thinking of the word and in your brain you know exactly what that word is,
Mhm.
but you just can't process it, and that's the closest thing that I can think of is a brain fart, where I know exactly what the word is,
Mhm.
but I can't vocalize it.
Back when she was in the acute phase of recovery, not the chronic phase, it was hilarious. I'm sitting in speech therapy with her. Kathy, her speech therapist at the time, is working with her. And Deanna comes out now she's barely saying coffee. And she comes out, says it as clear as a bell. She says orangutan. And she said it contextually correct. My favorite animal, orangutan. Oh my gosh, we started busting up because we're like, she can barely say coffee, but she can say orangutan. So there's a
Well-
lot more in there than we think.
Well, we played a card game, Go Fish
Yeah.
game, and the first like couple of times I said orangutan correctly, and like in my head orangutan, and then narwhal.
Yeah, it was another one she
As
got. We
well.
were like, she didn't get goldfish, but she got narwhal. Okay.
So-
Like
She mentioned in the last podcast episode that her first two words were no and mom.
Yes, this is true.
How ironic, or how what were you like, oh, of course that would be no, mom. Well, at least she can do what she always does and be a stubborn kid. What was that?
Well, I'd go into her room and say goodnight to her, and I'd ask, do you want me to turn the light off? And I wanted her to say to me either yes, please, or turn my light off. And I go, would you like me to turn off your light? And she'd go, no, mom. I knew that's not what she meant. So a couple times I'd close the door and she'd yell at me. And I'd open up the door and I'm like, light off? And eventually she finally was able to say it properly.
Yeah.
and
But
linguine.
oh yeah, in our house, we have a new dish. I don't think any other household in America has heard of it. It's called squeenie. And squeenie is linguine with clam sauce, white clam sauce. And for some reason, she was trying to say that's what she wanted for dinner. We were in the store, and she came out with squeenie. And I'm like, squeenie? But yep, linguine with clam sauce. That's
But
what that.
now,
And to this day, we say it just because it's our household thing.
Yeah.
and it's correct, linguine and clam sauce now, but before, man, I didn't say it correctly every time.
So just a couple quick things that I want to ask for our viewers and listeners before we close out this episode. What was it like, and how did you communicate to Deanna before the language started coming back?
I just talked to her like I always did. I didn't change. I didn't drop my vocabulary down to a lower vocabulary. I talked to her the way I did the day before she had her stroke.
Mhm.
Always. Never water down your language.
And how did you understand what she wanted? Did you like draw things out, words, have her
Well,
point?
At the
I
very
did
beginning,
that.
we had a picture book,
Yep.
and that lasted about not even a month, and she threw that on the floor. She's like, nope. It takes a lot of patience, but we would work with her, and I would hold up the item and see if she could say the word, and then say, is this what you want? And then no, mom would come out, and then I'd put the item back, and then she'd stomp her good leg,
hmm
which meant I couldn't say it right. That's what I wanted, but I said no, mom.
Well, I wanted my retainers from home so bad.
Oh, when you were in the rehabilitation?
Yes. And you took pictures of my room, and I found, well,
You found the retainers on the picture,
yeah, and I'm like,
pointing to that.
yeah.
So for those of you who can't see, Deanna's Italian side's coming out and she's hitting the
Sorry.
microphone.
Sorry.
So I'm. If you hear thud 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 thud, don't worry. That's just Deanna Italianing.
Can I just show this off one more time before we close out?
Yeah. And while
I know Deanna loves it, but I
Yeah.
just want to show this one
That
more time. This is a
so
yeah,
beautiful.
I knew
Gorgeous.
that was coming, and I was so excited to see it.
Well, okay. First of all,
We're talking about the
asked
modified cutting board.
my Tyler's dad if can you make me a cutting board with the modifications on it for our wedding gift.
Oh, I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
so while we're showing that off, could you just tell the audience in a couple of sentences or a paragraph or however you want to say it, what advice do you have for people, not just strokes, but in general, families, friends of people with disabilities? What advice could you give them?
I think that for me, prayer and my faith helped a lot. And you just have to have a lot of patience with your loved one. Because there are days as a caregiver, it's frustrating for the caregiver, but also how frustrating is that to a person who was fully functional before they had their accident, whatever you want to call it?
Mm-hmm.
How frustrated are they? And they are probably more scared because they don't know what their recovery is going to be. I was scared too. I didn't know, you know, some well-meaning person at the rehab said, "Well, why don't you put her in a nursing home?" And I'm like, "My 14-year-old is not going to eat dinner with a bunch of 80-year-olds who aren't talking to each other. No." And, Deanna was home um, starting the second semester of her freshman year, but she went back for her first semester of her sophomore year. She went back into school. So providing an enriched environment, providing an enriched environment for your loved one is very important. I feel sad when I see people who are ensconced in their home all day long and there's no one there to talk to them, to keep them engaged. Day programs shouldn't be ruled out because that also helps the person's mind become re-engaged. And that's my thought.
Well, thank you very much for being on
I'm
the
sorry,
podcast.
I was so busy playing
Oh, that's
with
fine.
the cutting board.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Deanna's going to say one more thing and then close us out for this episode.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and watching us, and go follow us, and see you in our third
The third episode.
podcast.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Available wherever your podcasting platform of choice lives. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.